Welcome to another episode of the Unexpected Podcast. My name is Alisher, and I am outside of the Philadelphia region. I am joined by my co-hosts Matt and Evan, who are both in the Boston area. Rainier, who is in Hilversum in the Netherlands, and our guest today, Haroon. Haroon, where are you coming from? Where in the
Uh,
Netherlands?
from the Rotterdam area, so it's a little bit more to the south of Amsterdam.
Okay, and I think we have a really great episode planned for today. We're going to be talking about the Dutch GT, which took place about 2 months ago now, I think. And unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but Matt, Evan, and Rainier were all there. And we're going to be able to kind of cover that event. And it seemed like from the receiving end of just hearing little bits and pieces of news that it was a really great event. So I'm excited to talk about it and ask some questions. So Haroon, I wanted to start off by asking you, so how does, I guess, SBG work in the Netherlands? Do you guys have a league? And are you specifically part of a group that hosts this event annually?
Yeah. So first off, I think concerning the league things, we're currently now starting a new league once again in 2024. For the last couple of years, we didn't had one because, well, due to the COVID, there were no possibilities or anything to run the league though. But back in 2017, I started up the Dutch league for the first time. People could qualify for at that time the European Team Championships and also the ranking and how we would put down our teams for the Arcon event. But this year, yeah, it's going to be amazing though, because I think over the last few years, the Dutch community has been growing so fast in such a positive way, which is for me actually amazing to see. Because yeah, if we're going a little bit back into history, I'm doing now the normal hobby for over 20 plus years, and I think Middle Earth was always my first and still the game I love the most. And around 2004, 2005, something like that, I started to move into the scene in the Netherlands, and I think there we had like maybe maximum 20 or 30 people coming around from the entire country to two or three places because you had two or three great tournaments over the year where you saw everyone. And then during the year itself, you only had like one or two smaller events near the area. And I think around 2014, 2015, it picked up a little bit more. I think it's also been a bit of the influence when GW started to bring back Middle Earth in a new jacket with also the Hobbit movies and everything like that. And yeah, from there on, it started to grow because I had a location as well where I could start to organize tournaments together with the Rotterdam White Scars. So that's also the group slash hosts that are currently now organizing the Dutch GT, but also other tournaments. Which yeah, all of those tournaments are around 50 plus people. And if I could even if I could put more people into the place, I think I could even go up to 75 or anything like it. So been really blessed with that. But yeah, that's it. A little bit in a nutshell.
This is more so just out of curiosity. So in the US, we have a lot of like pocket clubs almost in different regions throughout.
Mhm.
Are there a lot of like, you said you're with the Rotterdam White Scars. Is there a bunch of pocket clubs throughout the Netherlands?
Definitely, definitely. I think over the last few years, what is it? Myself and Kevin, that is also active in the Middle Earth international scene. We set up, or at least we took over one of the Dutch discords, and now it's been the central point of the Dutch community where everyone comes together, and in there you saw all the small pocket or all the small locations started to really flourish. So I think we now have like a small community in the north of the Netherlands that's been led by Jesper. He's doing it through the Warhammer stores, but also at other locations. We've got the Fantastic Club in Arnhem, so that's a little bit more to the east border towards Germany and everything. A lot of them also are sometimes going across the border to visit some of our German friends over there. And then, yeah, I think in the middle of the Netherlands, we've got us that are organizing, I think, the bigger tournaments. But we now also have like smaller events going on there as well. From Kevin, Menno, for example, Larry. But those are also already, all around the area of Rotterdam. A little bit more towards Amsterdam as well. But I think, central Netherlands is probably our territory where we currently are the big fish.
Okay, that is all very interesting information. So you were talking about just your participation in hosting this large event. How many years now? Obviously, COVID probably disrupted things, but how many years has the Dutch GT been going on now?
If I'm correct, it's from 2017, 2018.
Okay.
So I think when Articon started to do the invitationals and everything, so that the winner could go to Articon and participate in the Masters. We've been there as a group since day one at Articon, and we always supported James in every way that we could. I think with even the first few years we took up the responsibility for the painting competitions and everything because, well, the Netherlands really enjoys the painting and all the aspect of it. But yeah, when we got this opportunity as well, we said like, hey, listen, if we can help with it, we definitely will. So I think it's now 3 or 4 runs we had. And up until now, we never had an official Dutchie representing the Netherlands. So
Okay. So kind of moving on to the next question that I have that I'm very curious about. Now, obviously, Evan, Matt, and Renier are all probably well acquainted with this, but how was the tournament organized for me and people listening? Like, what were the points levels? How was the kind of the scoring and scenario selection? Like, how was the tournament organized?
okay, yeah. Well, for most of us, yeah, most of the times when we're doing the tournaments, we're looking around what point value has been played the most. So currently in the Netherlands, but also at the international tournaments where most of our guys and girls are going towards these days is 650. So we did the Dutch GT as well on 650, just to stay in that environment to get people known a little bit more into it and dive a bit more into the meta here and there. So that was a simple one. I think up until now we only played once at the Dutch GT and 700 event. So then we had a few people playing still with Smaug, but I think that those were also the years that Articon was participating in 700 points as well. I think at that point, Devin at the time played against Thijs with a Smaug at that time, so it was also lovely to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, we always see what the international tournaments are doing. So also looking to Nova, to a few other internationals as well. Like, hey, what do they currently do, and would that fit in our community? And then I think we also talk with like all the small hosts or club leaders from the community as well. Like, hey guys, what would you like to see? We've got the venue, but you guys are actually the ones that we need to fill up the event. So what would be your preference, so to say? And then most of the times it is around the same point value as the international tournaments. For the scenarios, we did actually for scenarios just all the pools once at least, and then we always have this nice traditional of like the first one. We have like these plush D6 dice. Mm-hmm. We always go to 2 people and rolling the dice to give them the fate of everyone, so that they can't complain about what actually been rolled. I think only on the Saturday evening. So we're going into, when we play 3 rounds, we go into round 4 on the Sunday. Most of the times then we will roll ourselves to make it a little bit easier and give the people that are upstairs having a drink, having some more social times. We will do that all behind the scenes as well to give them the maximum time to get together. And yeah, I think further, the scoring points and everything. This year we got a lot of feedback that first we had like a 3-2-1 system. And then the VPs as well, and painting points as the tiebreakers. The first few years that went pretty well, but the more international people we gained, the more we want to focus on how would it be international. So we went eventually for the match play guide. I think that one is quite balancing, overbalanced. And it's also really easy because if anyone has some questions to it, you can always say like, hey, your match play guide on that page is the point system.
Okay. That is also very interesting information. I love how you guys have a collaborative aspect of like reaching out to the various clubs throughout the region to get some information from them. I don't have too many more questions, but I do have a few more things that I'm curious about. So everyone, for the most part in this group, like we all have experience ourselves running events, obviously at a much smaller scale. But I was really curious. I wanted to just ask, like, what goes into running this large, now essentially international event, such as the Dutch GT? I mean, you had players coming in really from all over the world to play in this event. So what goes on, or what goes into organizing an event like that?
Yeah. So first off, I always have to say, and I think I also speak on behalf of Thijs. That's actually my co-host running the events and running the Rotterdam White Scars. It's always a blessing to have the international people. So this year, when we heard like Matthew and everyone to participate, later on, Rainier, Luca from Italy, we had so many international people. And I think especially when the Dutch community saw those names popping up, like, oh my God, guys, here comes the big guns, you know. Now it needs to be completely serious. But yeah, for us, I think for us as a community, we're such open and we're always interested in what's going on in other countries. And when we have the time to socialize and everything, we're always there to have a nice beer and a chat about what's going on in their countries. And I think that also helped building it up because I think, yeah, that the last 3-4 years, even before COVID, we already had like a lot of people from Belgium, but also starting Germany. Unfortunately, we now didn't have space, but otherwise we would have a few of the Finnish people coming over as well because Thijs also participated in the Finnish nationals. We had even last year a few of the guys from Northern Ireland over as well. And yeah, unfortunately, our event's always bombing with the Scottish GT as well. But otherwise, we had like a lot of those guys want to participate into it as well because, well, we've traveled quite a lot of times towards those events. But yeah, organizing these things, it's always, yeah, I don't know. I think now at this point, we're going and do it on autopilot.
Okay.
But to give a bit of a view, I think it's a bit similar like what you will do on a small event. So always calculate in on how much room you can actually, or how much tables you can put in the room. We've decided this year to open it a little bit more so that there would be a bit more air and places to store stuff, etc. And we also tried a new formation with the tables. Mm-hmm. So we now made like 4 lines instead of like multiple smaller lines, which actually gave a little bit more space and also an opportunity for us to say like, hey, next year we will have more tables though, due to the success of how easily this was actually run by us. Mm-hmm. And then further, well, I think half of the terrain or 66% is from us, from the Rotterdam White Scars, which has actually been funded by the community. So we're, in this case, a non-profitable organization. We always say like everything that we get in, we will pay the venue for, but everything we will then put down on Patreon or our social media pages to showcase like, hey guys, this is actually what we've created or what we could create now with the help of you guys supporting our events. And some of the more scenic tables and everything was done by one of our local guys that is really into the modeling aspect and making thematic boards and everything in the full recognition for Tolkien and the world of Middle Earth. And then it's all coming together, you know. Then the Friday, it's always setting up. Everyone is enjoying. Takes like 3.5 hours. And then with the team that we have, so we're actually with 4 people. Mm-hmm. One of them was now with me on the Saturday and on the Sunday as well, but he didn't do that much due to he had his commission painting stand there as well. And yeah, Thijs was also not there due to some obligations with some of the other things he has next to the Rotterdam White Scars. Um, but yeah, and then from there on, it's just running and having fun with it. I think that's at least the spirit that always keeps me going with these events because they are massive. You always need to compose yourself and help everyone and giving them the best feeling that they can have because that's I think especially important for the international people. How are they doing? Are they enjoying themselves? Are they not feeling what is it locked somewhere in a corner with their own group, not getting to know the rest of the community? So that's especially for me and Thijs really important to get people connected and always seeing at this event that everyone comes together, having fun with it. That's for us like the most amazing thing there is. So, and I think that's also the success of what we have from our event the last couple of years.
Have you always run it at the same hotel, or has it been different hotels?
So the first 2 years we did it together with like we had the opportunity to work together with one of the other bigger communities in the Netherlands, Alliance Open. They are doing like the Warm and Fantasy, Warm Age Sigmar, and the Warm 40K ones. So that one was in Amsterdam. But I had to put the prices that they asked for 40K, I had to ask to the Middle Earth community, which is not the same community. So there is a lot of commitment though, but most people can't afford the same what the local players from 40K or Age Sigmar at that time could afford. So those events were always like around 15 or 16 people maximum. And it was really a shame because I talked with them multiple times, said like, if you would just make a ticket, because the tickets at that time were, what is it, almost 80 euros or something like that, to the comparison that what we currently do for 70 euros. But there was nothing extra with it. So you had like a small lunch with some sandwiches and a small can of soda. And then, yeah, in comparison to what we have, well, you guys now experienced it. Like it's a full buffet and everything on there.
I have to say that venue was that may have been the best venue I've ever been in for an SBG tournament. And just to give folks, just to give folks a sense of what this was.
Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, so you're us, at least in the United States, are used to when we're going to an SBG tournament, we're either in like, somebody's store, or we're in like the back room of some space where somebody knows a guy, or we're in some the convention space of some kind of generic hotel that's just basically kind of like empty walls and a carpeted room and then a bunch of tables set up. This was in kind of a boutique tourist hotel in the basement of the hotel. And this hotel had like a like a full gourmet restaurant upstairs. So if you stayed there, you could have like top class food just walking downstairs. And then, on top of that, in addition to the fact that kind of the meals were provided through this hotel, so they would put on like a lunch for us where we would go upstairs and have like, kind of a gourmet meal each lunch. They had a bar downstairs, like right in the venue room. So you could just walk over the bar and get something to drink, and they had snacks laid out you could get, and it was even catered to the extent that like folks would like bring platters of like hors d'oeuvres around to the table and say, would you like some? And I mean, it was great. It was first time I tried it. I'm probably going to butcher this, but is it Oliebollen? Is that how it's pronounced?
Oh, you mean no? It's a bitterball.
Bitterball, that's what it was.
Yes.
Right, bitterball. Yeah.
Yes.
Which was I guess a traditional Dutch holiday food that they're just bringing these around, and it's kind of like a fried bread ball with kind of some kind of super sauce in the middle that you bite into.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a lot of fun.
I want to second that though, Matt, because we always go to events around the world and we say, wow, next time I want to visit this city. But there you actually felt like you experienced some Dutch culture, some lekker food. Like it was just a nice we went for walks afterwards, and like the neighborhood was just gorgeous. Evan and I stayed like what, like maybe a mile away, and we'd walk in
Yeah,
the
something like
morning,
that.
and we'd just be like, wow, just what a beautiful place, you know?
Yeah. And at one point my wife was actually upstairs in the room. I think we were playing at the time, but the local town Christmas festival like took place outside our window. And she like got to watch the Christmas parade go by and and then kind of various festivities happening like right outside the window. It was really a great it was a great tourist experience on top of the SBG experience, and that's not something I think you usually get in ordinary in an ordinary SBG tournament. So I really want to make sure that gets that aspect of it gets talked up. It was a fun trip as well as a fun tournament.
It sounds like we need to step up our tournament game here in the US. Like
We
that seems
do.
like that's hard to beat, to be perfectly honest. I have two more questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the guys who were there to talk about their experiences. But you've touched on this a little bit. It actually, hearing you talk about the painting culture in the Netherlands was really interesting. I would say we have some really talented artists here in the US who like spend a lot of time on that area, but kind of hear you describe that it's so pronounced in the Netherlands was really interesting. But I wanted to ask, I'll kind of roll these two questions together so that hopefully we can get through them pretty quickly. But what would you say, like, what is the competitive social culture like in the Netherlands for SBG? And then to kind of round that out, what is also the meta like in the Netherlands? I think we're all competitive players. A lot of competitive people listen to the podcast, so I think we're probably all pretty curious about that. But then, so how's the social culture there? And then what is the meta like in the Netherlands?
Okay, so I think for the social part and painting aspect, it's fantastic. It's great. I think compared to other, well, I've been to few international events. Most of them in the UK, Scotland. I've now had the opportunity of participating a few in Belgium, Germany, but now also in Finland as well. I haven't participated. I was actually playing next to that event as well, but seeing it with Thijs, that was something also spectacle playing on there. But seeing people putting so much effort in there for painting because people are really motivating each other over the phone, WhatsApp, Discord, and anything, and saying like, "Hey, I've converted this and this. Oh, have you seen this and this on like one of the other Facebook groups?" And then they start to work on that together, and they just challenging each other themselves. It is something that always been there, and it's really hard to describe though because I think a lot of us now, because as I said before, like in the beginning we had like 14 or 15 people, and then you had like maybe 5, 10 people casual, and 5 of them could actually really paint really nice. I would say even tabletop standard and then tabletop standard plus. But now everyone does that. Almost everyone is just enjoying that. But they started also bring in that meta a little bit, and that also comes to your second question, because everyone is enjoying the painting so much, but over the last few years we got so much cool miniatures coming out, or that came out actually, but also different legions, traits, and everything, that a lot of people also said like, hey, I can still do the painting aspect, but I can also participate finally a little bit in the meta, because they are now actually focusing a little bit more on thematic armies, on things that happen in the books or in the movies or anything like it. And well, I think a good example, what I think all 3 guys experienced as well, and what everyone sees in the world as well, the Dragon Emperor is doing lovely on every table. But for a lot of those guys as well, they are also fantastic to paint. The new miniatures for what is it? The Black Dragon upgrades and everything. The Dragon Emperor itself, Utabi, Brogir, they are really, really stunning. I think we even missed out a few of the people which were our local Barreling players. I don't think they're that much of a meta, but I think the sub tier, or I think at least up until the top. They can really participate well with them. But also Black Riders. I'm a huge fan of what is it? Bringing the Necromancer, the few of Ringwraiths of Dol Guldur that can also do a pretty swing as well. But yeah, I think overall for that social part is really good, and the painting aspect only makes it even better. Concerning to the meta part, I think we now have like a group of 15 to 20 people, I would say, that are really checking everything, that are talking as well with international people, maybe with some people like yourself, over different social medias or anything like it. And they just want to get everything out of the game, not only in the form of like, okay, there are still a few loopholes in here, which I can exploit as a really competitive player, but also of like, okay, I want to really step up my game because the group around me is becoming much, much better as well. And they start to talk, starting to observe other events, starting to listen to podcasts like this podcast and a few of the other ones as well. So yeah, I think the regular things that you guys see now in the tournament scene. So we just covered it a little bit. Dragon Emperor. I was actually surprised to see Assault on Lothlorien. Was it 3 or 4 times across the entire tournament? Even after the nerf, they're still pretty good, but I think they lost a little bit of spice in there. But then also seeing a lot of the old combinations coming back again. So Suladan joining in every form or shape that you can imagine of. So binding with Mordor or with any of the others. In good as well, a lot of Gondor still, because Gondor still has a lot of opportunities in creating a lot of cool and also strong lists. But not that much yellow alliances or red alliances, at least from what I can still remember, though, because as we said, it's been now a few months though. But I haven't seen that much yellow alliances. It was mostly green with maybe 5 to 10 of yellow alliances, if I'm correct. If I'm not, guys, then you've all probably checked it better than I did. So please correct me in this one as well.
Yeah, but I want to say something else too about y'all's terrain was really good. I think like all of us can agree, like at the event, I was really impressed. It reminded me a lot about Nova, where each board had a lot of spunk and personality, enough, I guess, uniqueness to add to the game, but not too much, you know what I mean? There wasn't like a huge mountain or like 5 rivers, but it was good to where it allowed us every single game. I was just like immersed in the scenery with my opponent, and we were like super excited, and we we're like, oh, I'm so happy that we're able to play on this. Oh, we're kind of glad we lost, so we go down so we can play on this board. So there were a lot of those type of conversations. I don't want to say that the event also shined in, and it was my second Dutch event that I attended, and I want to say both of them had just spectacular terrain.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that, Rennie. I think for us it's also important to showcase the entire game aspect of Middle-earth. I think Middle-earth has so much rules concerning terrain and everything. And I think we can all speak about that certain events aren't bringing that awesome aspect of the game itself at the moment, or at least not in the way it should be. So I think in the core games it now says like at least 66% or something should be terrain on your table with multiple different aspects in there as well. So to answer your question, I think a lot of people said as well with like the thematic tables, they're great. But I've seen tournaments having them only on the bottom tables. So then at some point you even, maybe as a casual competitive player, you still want to play on those, but you never had the opportunity to play on them. So this year we also said like in every row we want to put at least 1 or 2 tables, but definitely not the top 5 tables, because those are way too important. So I think the first thematic table was table 6, something, if I'm correct with the Shire table and the 2 bigger hills on there. And then further we had like a Gondor table, a few of the Mordor tables with like a lot of lava and rock terrain as well. But we also wanted next to those thematic tables, we also want to challenge, especially the more experienced players to really abuse those rules as well. So I think if we had we had Evan for most of our tournament on the top table, but I think on that top table you had like every sort of piece of terrain on there that he could use at some point. So you had like hedges, fences, but also smaller buildings, big buildings. So if there was something where you could get some advantages out, it was on the table there. And that is something what I sometimes miss in those bigger events, if I have to be honest. So for example, Articon. I've been now to Articon 5-6 times. Always lovely terrain, great tables, but I really, really hate always every table that has like this sort of orc tent in the middle, you know? I'm getting so frustrated about that piece that I'm like, please, James, change it a little bit here and there, you know, because there are so much more elements in there. And I think the last couple of years, he finally listened to that feedback and he changed the tables upstairs, or at least to the more top tier, where also the Masters is being held. They have a little bit different terrain where they can start abusing it a bit. I can say abusing, but it's always something at least that we want to bring to the Words table, because then you can truly see the difference between a competitive player and a competitive player that knows all the ins and outs, or the truly understanding of what you can do with like the small rules.
Yeah, actually, to sort of piggyback on that point a little bit with the table setup. So I played on table 1 5 times, but it felt like each time I was figuring out a new thing to do on that table, right? Like there was always some sort of like, I could flip sides, I could change if, we're going side to side instead of playing front to back. I think in between the days, the terrain on the table was shifted around a little bit, so that created new opportunities and stuff like that. So despite the fact that I didn't really experience the breadth that of the terrain that was offered at the tournament, the way you guys used your terrain allowed for very interesting gameplay, which I appreciated.
That's all what we want to hear, right? So, and especially to point on that as well, I think, especially on the Saturday, and this is also one of those parts where you guys also ask, like, hey, how much are you interactive with the community? I think at some point, Evan came to us as well and said, like, hey, it's fantastic. But if I need to stay here all weekend, it's going to get a little bit, I don't want to say boring, but give me something else. And then for me and Thijs, it's in that moments like, hey, listen, it doesn't matter if you're on table 24 or on table 1 or wherever. If people really think like, hey, there needs to be a certain change, and can we offer that, then we will. And I think especially we did it now at the Saturday evening when everyone was doing their social things, enjoying their free time, that we had like a small moment of okay, listen, we've got a lot of feedback on these tables. Let's sort those out. Let's change them a little bit so that there are new challenges for those in the morning. And we always do that automatically with table 1, no matter who's playing on there. It's especially we had it in the past as well. Someone that played like 3 or 4 rounds on table 1, it gets a little bit dull or uninterested. Yeah, not interested in anymore into it. And that's not something you should experience, because it can also suffer at some point for your, getting the scores in or playing that game.
Well, that is all actually very interesting information. The more you guys talk about it, the more I feel bad that I wasn't able to make it myself. But switching gears just a little bit from like the structure of the event itself, I am, of course, very curious to gain some, just hear a little bit about how Matt, Evan, and Rainier's experiences were. You guys can, this is up to you. If you guys want to talk about what your scores at the event were now, or if you want to reveal that later, that's up to you. But I'm really, so obviously, each of you played 6 rounds. We can't go over feasibly 18 games throughout the duration of this episode. But I am really curious to see what was either like a game highlight, so like one of your 6 games that was a highlight itself, or a highlight of just within a game.
All right. Shall I start?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, I guess like what a lot of people do, they do scores. So I went 6 games, 4 major victories, 1 major loss, and 1 minor loss. So I ended the tournament at 4-2.
Mhm.
I was actually quite happy about that, considering that I've been in Asia and Honduras for the past 3 years, coming to a pretty competitive event. Like it
Oh,
felt.
also, sorry, not to cut you off, but what were you playing? If you can just give people a rundown.
I was playing the non-competitive Dragon or Emperor Leech. But it was fun. I was like one of those like toddlers that steals a Ferrari basically. So many things. My opponents are all telling me how to play that play. They're like, actually, you shouldn't do that. This is what this guy does. And I'm like, what? But, but a common theme is I came up against a lot of really good Dutch players. That I don't want to say shocked me, but it kind of caught me off guard because in the US meta, we have only really come across Brits, Italians. We came across some Dutch at Articon the past year, but like that was a new reoccurring thing as the Dutch are getting quite competitive. So I was shocked at how the each game, regardless of how it went, was really competitive. Down the line from my first game to my last game, I did also play. I played Kevin, who's I think one of your guys' top players, really, really good. And I also played Luca, one of the top players in Italy, really good. But all the other players, fantastic. But yeah, so a common theme that I did come across was I played against a lot of elves, which was
Really?
nice.
Really?
Yeah, I played against two, I think, yeah, two, wait, one Rivendell Lorien Alliance, one Numenor Lorien Rivendell Alliance, and then one Mirkwood with Thranduil army, and that's 1, 2, 3. I believe a Corsairs, another Easterlings with Mordor allied, and Luca played Assault on Lothlorien.
Mm.
It was a good blend of like really competitive legions and really good tailored. I think you don't touch on it pretty well. Like you can tell that all the Dutch players thought meticulously about their lists down to the model and war gear. And that's what I like because it's like each game felt like, oh wow, like they're coming to to bring it. So I had to like step up and stuff. That said, the one game that stuck out to me was the first, and it was Lords of Battle against a. Let me see if I can remember what Joachim had. He had Galadriel with a lot of Fight Six Guards of Galadrim Court, Elendil, and quite a good mix of Numenor. Banner in there, a Sentinel, and I think he had another hero. But yeah, it was against Hakim, which is a good player, I believe, in your region, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I play regular with him, and I think, yeah, what is it? He's always a fantastic lad. He's always this competitive edge on there, but he's always doing it with a smile, and he truly enjoys the game in its best format, so to say.
He does. And shenanigans, if there's one word that can like describe my game against him, it's shenanigans.
Oof, for sure, for sure.
So really good player. So like I've had a conversation with Akeem before at Articon and through WhatsApp and stuff, and it's really nice. But then I finally we matched first round. And I was like, oh yes, Lords of Battle. Let's see. Oh shoot, it's like an elite list that's specifically made to fight the Dragon Emperor. But let me see if I can screen share. Basically, what happened was he did a good job at kind of castling in the corner, and I like came up against him. I was hoping to get Elendil to attack me so I can try to take him out with the Emperor with enchanted blades or whatever. He did take the bait, but he killed my captain and like a lot of my might through the process. I was like, dang it. Like I should have placed better, but he did kind of trap himself. And then I just piled everything on. It's similar because actually Matt and Alisher played him at doubles at Articon. So I
Mm.
was
Mhm.
hoping he did a similar thing with Behorn, right?
Well, yeah, he had to. He had to charge with Baylor.
Yeah, so I was like, oh no, Akeem, you did the same thing. Don't do that. But like it was of course really good for him because he took out my might. And then I'm gonna share the screen and tell you exactly what happened and why it was
He was
my
able to avenge his poor rolling.
yes, allow Zoom to share your screen. Let me just open preference. Oh shoot. Perfect. One sec, guys. Yes, it was a really good game. Super friendly. We both said in the beginning of the game, look, and this is an important thing to play as a competitive player where you say, look, this is what I take seriously when it comes to competitive. This is what I don't take considerately seriously. And for us, it was movement. If we were intentional with something, we'd say, look, my intention is this. If someone bumps the table or something, this is exactly what I want. My guy is 6 inches over 6 inches, stuff like that. So he was a huge gentleman, but basically this is what happened. So here, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, yep.
We have Elendil here, down here, and he kind of killed my captain, which was smart, my might. But I knew that it was Lords of Battle. Okay, Elendil is going to be the beat stick. If he just like takes out my flank, it's going to be ruin. So I won the roll off for a move. I took him into Elendil, totally surrounded him, and I'm like, I'm going to kill this sucker outright. However, I left a guy here, and I forgot that Galadriel has that cheeky compel spell. So Galadriel cheeky, and of course Akeem is a world-class player, really smart. He can like, I don't know, like you guys, all the Dutch players listening to this probably know he can get himself out of anything. So he took this guy in this little hole, and here he comes ready to heroic combat with that.
Ah.
Yes. Now let me guys show you this next picture.
So wait, just for those listening to try to describe this a little bit, everything right now is really condensed. Galadriel is kind of off, depending on your point of view. She's off to the left right now, with several of her warriors on an Easterling, presumably at this point, to heroic combat. She compelled a gap to where further into the battle, although everything's really condensed, there's now like a 25 mil hole where the Emperor can get charged. Right now, the Emperor is engaged with Elendil and a bunch of Easterlings. So you kind of have two different like battle stages. Galadriel's on the one side, the Emperor's on the other side, and now this is kind of a race to try to free.
Yeah. So basically, I was gonna like try to one shot Elendil. I had Blade Wrath, right? With which would you make him pretty
Yep.
strong? Blade Wrath, the what's his face, the Emperor. I had struck up, so I should have won. I'm gonna win this combat, and here with it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 models, including Gladriel, who had I think 2 might on her. Now, of course, heroic combat kill that one Easterling. Numenorians are in that fight as well, so strength 4 should roll a 6 to kill him. Stop that attack from me, kind of like destroying Elendil. Picture number 2. Akeem rolls a 5 highest and a 3 highest with Galadriel. Literally, I proceed to shield, and what do I roll?
Of course, this.
Okay.
The solid 6 in the corner.
This is it right here with my lucky die. If anybody knows, this I won when I won Nova, but it always rolls a 6 for some reason. So it's not a cheat dice, guys. Blame Devin. He gave it to me. So yeah, here you go. He rolls here 5 high, but of course this is with an elf. There are other dice off of this picture, but he's also rolling like 2s and 1s, poor guy. And then with Gladriel, who has the might, rolls a 3 high. So he cannot even might it up to a 6. And then we would just both look at each other like this should not happen. And then we both are just knowing, just waiting. Okay, I'm gonna roll a 6. We just knew it. And I rolled the 6. And if anyone knows from the first game at that event, there was lots of screaming at this game. A big gasp of oh, and then of course followed by, that should not happen. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, that was pretty bad. And then so that combat does not go off. He surprisingly Elendil survives with me like totally piling everything in, winning the fight. But then the game just went a little sour for him with luck, and I just started killing his defense 6 things with ease, killing his guys that outfight me and stuff, and finally
Mm.
killed Elendil. So it was a fun game, a really, really like hectic kind of we kind of countered each other with the meta in a sense. I had the numbers, I had some magic. He had the fight 6, he had the strength 4. So it was a really even match at Lords of Battle where every single kill counts. And then I just took out a lot of his guys. I was up by like 6 or 8 points. We go 2 more rounds. He catches up with like 6 or 8 kills on the second to last round. We're like, what's going on now? He's just killing these Easterlings left and right with like strength 3. And we're like, oh my gosh, Akin, like we might tie it. We're gonna tie it. And then last round I killed like 8 guys. So it was just literally like I don't know why, but my Instagram algorithm thinks that I love watching these big like European dudes slap each other in the face taking turns, you know, those tournaments. That's exactly what it felt like. We were just taking turns slapping each other and like screaming and stuff. So fantastic game. He played it to the T perfect, besides maybe Elendil getting out of his league and getting killed, but like look at that. That should not have, he should have rolled a 6 with 8 die and 2 might. So yeah, fantastic game. But I want to say that was the theme of all of my games.
It
Highly
sounds like the
competitive
moral of the
players.
story is that the Easterlings are overpowered and Rainier is a meta chaser. That's what I'm getting out of this.
I am a meta chaser. Yeah, I'm like I come back and I gotta win. I'm like
This
in the
seems like a great game, though.
no. It was a really great game, and his look at his models like just like your own was talking about. Look at this. I'm not known for a good painter.
Stunning,
He's not
honestly.
I
It
don't know
is
if he's known for
like,
one of the best paint jobs, but this is a fantastic paint job by
it
him.
is
We were
absolutely.
just excited, 2 players using the terrain to our advantage or disadvantage, wonderfully painted models, and just having fun with it with competitive armies, like both highly competitive armies, but having fun. So that was like the theme of the whole. I'm gonna stop sharing. The whole event is just we had a blast. All of my games a blast, to be honest.
Yeah, if anyone's listening in as opposed to watching, you really should go in and take a look at the pictures because I think we're somewhere around 50 minutes into the video if you want to jump up. It's worth taking a look because I mean just from that little glimpse, the board looks great. Obviously half the models there are Rainier's. They look very good. Hakeem's stuff looks fantastic. So that looks really great. What about you, Evan?
Otherwise, what is it? Otherwise, Alice, sorry to
No,
bother
no.
in. We also have like we made videos and photos. You can also watch those on our
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
social media
professional
pages as
pictures
well.
too.
So yeah, for the painting as well. So if anyone is interested at that point, we will. They're all over there, so they can always watch and see how that went. So
But yeah, that was this fantastic game all around. I came like I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to talk about your bad luck on YouTube, but
This is the second
it
time.
was just great. It shouldn't have
First
happened, honestly.
Aeorin and
Like it
now
shouldn't have. But
Elendil.
you guys know my luck. Like I always roll 6s. Like I'm not a good player, guys. Anyone watching, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna come against like Rainier. He's on that competitive." Guys, I'm not. I just roll 6s at the
You
right
figured
time.
out the wrist technique, right?
It's that my Indonesian heritage. Like I have the perfect. There's dances. It's a whole anthropological meta. All right, so that's mine.
What about you, Evan?
All right. So,
Evan just gonna
um,
say, I came, I saw, I conquered. The end.
all right. Yeah, I'm gonna remute myself. I think Rainier summarized my portion perfectly. No, so, um, yeah, so I did end up winning the tournament. So obviously things went well for me. But I think probably the thing that stood out to me the most at this tournament was just how friendly my games felt, even though, um, even though that I was on the top table most of the time, everybody was super friendly. Minus my dad, of course. When I played against him, you were nasty as always. But other than that,
And
um,
with cause, I might add.
do you want to talk
I know
about that
that
game quickly,
game.
or is that part of the game you were gonna talk about, Dad?
No, yeah, I mean, we can talk about that if we want, or you know what we'll do? We'll save that particular grudge match for another podcast at some point, because I'm sure that
We'll
story
have
is,
to have a
you know.
podcast episode just of Matt and Evan talking about all the times they've had to play each other at tournaments.
It's literally like, guys, if anyone here like is in the States, you know every single event, regardless of where it is in the States, Evan and Matt are always like game 4 or 5
And the
up
worst
against
part,
which person's
is
gonna win
whoever
this time?
loses is gonna be like, oh yeah, I rolled badly in this one situation, or because in this
But then
case, Dad botched his rolls for hold ground and then decided to put his entire army in this little bubble that my army was surrounding, and then he never got to the center.
In my defense, it wasn't your army wasn't surrounding it at the time.
Hmm.
Because
Well,
not
Wait,
then
not
what were you
you just
playing?
gotta roll better on those heroic move offs than Dad. That's all I gotta
yeah,
tell you.
Yeah, you got to learn Rainier's flicking method.
you gotta do it,
yeah.
You
guys.
got to
I'll
figure
teach
out
you. I
how to
can
Exactly.
get.
Just
work
to
on
do.
it. You guys teach me there. Why do
Yeah,
you roll sixes, Rainier?
I think that's really the method I need to take my competitive gaming to the next level is I don't really have that dice skill that you have,
I
Rainier.
teach a
I need to
master.
pick it
That's
up.
all he remembers. Rainier just remembers the dice skill. All the competitive
Yeah,
stuff now, but
the next time I come down to Amsterdam, Rainier, I expect 3 days of just you teaching me
Shit,
how to
bro.
roll those dice.
Yeah, well, I'll do that, and you teach me actually how to play this game and what the heck a legion is.
No guarantees, man. No
I've been frozen
guarantees.
in time like freaking like who is Arnold Schwarzenegger in like Batman the old game. Like you guys got to teach me what these legions are because I come back and I'm like, what? There are extra rules.
Yeah. But yeah, everybody was lovely at that tournament. Um, Obviously, later on in the tournament, round 5, round 6, we were being very particular, of course, because that's what competitive players do. But there were no shouting matches, there was no unpleasant interactions. It was just, all right, how do you want to resolve this? Oh, let's resolve it this way. And then we figured it out. It
what were you
was
playing,
very,
by the
very
way?
lovely games. Yeah, so I ended up taking a sort of very, very standard mortar list. Didn't want to take anything too complicated. So I took Witch King on horse with a crown, um, all the stats you usually give him. And then the Mouth of Sauron on foot, and then Suladan Serpent Lord. Because of course you've got to ally him into every single list that he's green or yellow allied with, because why not? Um, and
Sure.
then I had a couple of mounted Haradrim guys, some Watchers of Karna, and then just Black Numenorians with Moraine and Orc spear supports. And mainly the list was just centered around two very cost-effective heroes, and then just a really decently large army, like 38 models, and just a solid shield wall to sort of beat down the opponents. And obviously it worked quite well. It was a lot of fun to play. It had good tricks, but it was also super solid. So I just had a good experience this tournament using it. Um, so I'd say my highlight was actually round 6, which was obviously the most important match. I was up against Luca Camaretto. Um, but the way that this tournament had sort of shaken out beforehand, I was the only person on 5 wins, and he had 4 wins and a draw. So basically, what I was looking for here was a draw, is what I needed, basically, in order to seal the tournament. Because if I draw, um, he drops down the rankings, and then the next two highest players are Dad and another player as well, who's also on 4 wins and 1 loss.
That
So I
was
pretty
Luca
much sealed the
Barberi.
tournament at that point. No, you played Luca in round 5. I
Oh, I
checked.
played Luca in round 5. Okay, all right, never mind then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's
Playing
right. You're
against
right.
two Lucas. What is this, guys?
That's right.
um, so yeah, and it's actually very interesting because the last time I played Luca, it was at the Articon Masters, and I had Bog Standard Minas Tirith, and he had his 650 point Assault on Lothlorien list, and we played Reconnoiter, and we ended up drawing in that game. And what do you know? But we drew Reconnoiter again. So he had his exact same army from that tournament, his assault on Lothlorien, and I had my mortar list, obviously, and we ended up getting Reconnoiter as the scenario. So basically, my plan going into it was priority 1, kill his spiders and bats, because those are going to be his best troops to be able to get off the board, and priority 2, don't break. And then I should be able to either secure a win or a draw decently comfortably. So we spread out a lot. He had, I think it was 55, 54 models, something like that. I had 38, 40, so I was at quite a significant numbers deficit. But I had to try and make that up with my terror and my superior troops. And we pushed forward a bit. Unfortunately for me, I ended up making a severe tactical error, which almost lost me the game. So he had a bat on one side of the board, and I had my Witch King very central, basically in order to react with his spells to stop any bats going through. Um, and the bat was in range of getting off the board next turn if he won the priority roll. But I had a plan for that. So I moved the Witch King to a situation where if I call a heroic move, then I can move first, compel the bat, and then charge in and kill it, and I can remove that problem. But I made a very poor judgment call. I decided to move him in front of a house with a bunch of my other guys that's closer to Luca's army that's advancing on me, instead of moving him behind, which is a less strong position, but is a much safer option. And I ended up almost paying for that because and I saw the tactic right after I moved him. Um, Luca made a situation where if he gets his captain in range of basically he puts his captain within 6 inches of a spider that's in charge range of the Witch King, and then he's got Drew's Hag in range 2, so he could enrage the spider, charge into the Witch King if he wins the heroic move off, and stop my move. So effectively he had a 25% chance to be able to get this bat off and win the game, flat out. He needed to win priority A and win the heroic move off B. And if those things happen, he wins the game. So we roll priority. He wins it. All right, I'm sweating. I'm nervous. And we do the roll off and it goes my way. And I just let out a huge sigh of relief because I had almost basically thrown that game. Because if I had put the Witch King behind the other way, I would have just been able to call the heroic move. He wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. So that was a very close call in that game. But thankfully, I was able to pretty easily destroy the rest of his maneuverable models. That bat died by getting surrounded and killed. I managed to compel his other bat over my line and kill that, and then kill the 2 spiders due to some unfortunate rolling from him and also some good positioning from me. And at that point, it was basically just don't break. And I think on the last turn he was like 3 models off breaking me or something like that. So it ended up being quite close. He almost managed to pull the win there. I think I was like 6, 7 models off of breaking him, so that wasn't going to happen probably. Um, and it ended up being another draw in the exact same scenario that we played last time. Um, and that ended up securing me the tournament win. So it was a really tense game, really fun. Luca's a nice guy despite being a very competitive player. And overall, yeah, I just had a blast with this tournament.
And then Matt, how about yourself? So what were you playing, and then what would you say was a tournament highlight?
So I was playing the Easterlings Legendary Legion. So I had, kind of the usual, I think it was actually the same list I ran at Articon. There might have been a figure off one way or the other, but so it was Emperor with 15 Black Dragon Pikes and 3 Black Dragon Cataphracts, one of which had a drum. Rutabi, who had I think like 6 normal Easterlings in her warband, and then Borgir, who had like 5 or 6, I can't remember exactly how many Easterlings in his warband. And so the game, the highlight of the tournament, although I did have had five really fun games and then one game against my son. Um, the highlight one was one that I played against Luca Barberi, and I think Evan is right. This was the penultimate game. This was round 5.
This is a different Luca, right?
Yeah, this is a different Luca. There were two Lucas who came from Italy. Evan fought one, I
Yep.
fought the other.
Yeah, the Lucas send or Italy sends Lucas, America sends Iversons.
That's right. This is the way. And so this was the penultimate game. It was round 5. I was just coming off of my drubbing by Evan. And he was playing the Helm Hammerhand Legendary Legions. So we had 2 Legendary Legions facing off. He had Helm, obviously. He had 2 captains. I believe they were both on a horse. At least one of them was on a horse, and then he had a few cavalry, but most of his army was just kind of guys on foot with throwing spear and shield. So he had the kind of throwing spear mob. So seize the prize, markers in the middle of the board. We're all kind of lined up and ready to go. We each call a heroic march. And then because we want to get there first, we each call a heroic move, and we've got our guys kind of lined up so that most of our stuff, can get up and benefit from this. And then we do, kind of one of the most important roles of the game. Who goes first on the heroic move? I won this, and I was able to project I had 3 cavalry, my 3 cataphracts, one of which had the drum, project them forward, and get 2 cataphracts in front. One guy comes up behind, steps on the objective, dismounts, and make the roll to pick up the objective, and I pick up the objective. And at this point, Luca goes, "Oh no, the game's over. Oh well, I'm doomed." I'm like, "Luke, it's not over yet. You get the rest of your army coming up, and things could happen." And so we go into turn 2, and at this point, because of most of the fact that most of my army moves 9, my cavalry's up there on the objective. I couldn't seal Helm off from getting in against me. I think in addition, I think one of his throwing spears killed off one of my cataphracts. So the area that I was kind of protecting around my guy with the objective got smaller. But we're at a point where I've got I think Rutabi within like 3 or 4 inches of the center. The Emperor's up there within 3 or 4 inches of the center. And if I win this heroic move off, I have 2 options. I can either hand the artifact or the prize to one of the cataphracts that's standing adjacent to it, and that cataphract kind of runs off, and the rest of the army just kind of moves up around it and goes at his army, in which case I probably have won the game. Or I can even just move it back and just give it to the Emperor. And that also probably wins me the game at that point, because he doesn't really have a good answer in that army to taking the Emperor down. But Luca wins the roll-off. And he is able to get, he did a great job of taking his cavalry and his guys and getting them in. He gets Helm into my guy with my dismounted Black Dragon cataphract with the artifact. He pins other guys in, and he pins kind of the rest of my army back, at least well enough. He basically kind of throws all his cavalry in to try and kind of hold the rest of my army back. So if he can call a heroic combat with Helm, win the combat against my guy, and then get out. And at that point, the game's probably his. So we go and we roll the combat, and he calls his heroic combat, and I shield. And he rolls all his dice, he gets his 6. I roll my 2 dice. And and I don't get a 6, I reroll it on the banner and I get the 6. So,
Hmm.
but because I'm within 6 inches of the Emperor, I am also fight 5 because he couldn't call a heroic strike and a heroic combat. So we do the roll off, and the roll off goes to me. So I retain, so Helm has to back off. I retain the artifact. So we go into the next round, and because he kind of sent in his cavalry at this point, and his cavalry basically, it was just it was a knowing suicide charge to hold the rest of my army back because I've got the fight value advantage, I've got the Emperor there, and I've got 3 ranks of pike there. So he threw in a bunch of his cavalry, like almost all of that cavalry died. And the rest of my army is kind of coming to grips with his army, and the rest of my army is going to beat his army over time. But the question is, can he hold me long enough to get this objective? So, at this point in time, Luca's like, oh no, I've lost. You're going to charge up to me the next turn. So we go and we do a heroic move off the next turn. And he wins it again. So he's able to get Helm back into my guy. At this point, Rutabi has kind of like fought her way up to next to this guy with the objective, but can't get into Helm. And he has a few figures left to kind of at least hold back the Emperor and the folks kind of around this fight in the center of the table. I'm able to bring other folks up around the edges. And what we end up is in a situation where now, Helm can win the combat, but can only kind of, if he wins the combat, he can only go sideways because between his own figures and my guys that have kind of lapped around the back, he can't back out further. So this time he calls the heroic combat. This time he wins, kills my guy, takes the objective, and then kind of gets as far to the side as he can. And then we have, yet another heroic, and what also happened is Rutabi had called a heroic combat trying to get into Helm's combat, didn't get it. Helm managed to get away. Rutabi is kind of like chasing after him and like gets within range of Helm. So if Rutabi wins the heroic move off, then Rutabi can get into Helm. A bunch of guys can get behind, and we've got a fight. So we go to the next turn's heroic move off, and Luca wins again. So there's all sorts of careful measuring going on, and what we end up is Luca decides he's going to try and get, because the rest of his army is kind of going down at this point. But he's going to take the objective and he's going to take it and get it to my side of the board. He's going to get as far to the side of the board as he can and kind of just get it over the edge.
Yeah.
And it looks like and when we do the measuring, Rutabi can get, Rutabi then does her move afterwards. Rutabi can get within 6 inches of Helm, but it looks like that's about it. So if Helm wins kind of one more of these roll-offs, Helm's gone. And what we do at that point, because Helm thinks he's made it. As long as he can like fight off Rutabi and then kind of get out of there, he's made it. So Luke is happy at this point. And what I end up doing is I managed to get the Emperor into somebody relative, toward that side of the board. Emperor calls a heroic combat, and Emperor is able to use the heroic combat to teleport or to move within 6 inches of Helm. So now the Emperor can grab him too. Unfortunately, when I looked at the table, I hadn't thought this out. By doing this, I blocked out Rutabi from getting into the Emperor, or I'm sorry, Rutabi from getting into Helm.
Yeah.
But at least I've got the Emperor over there. So we go to one more of these heroic move roll-offs, and this one I win. So at this point, I can't get Rutabi into the Emperor into Helm, but I can get the Emperor into Helm. And at this point, there's a whole bunch of my army kind of running it behind. They can't get there this turn. So I go into the Emperor, or I go into Helm with the Emperor. We both strike up. He wins the heroic strike off. He wins the combat. Fails to wound the Emperor. I think the Emperor kind of goes through all of his fate, but doesn't do wounds. But at this point, kind of the rest of my army is poised. So we have one more of these heroic move offs, and if Helm can make this heroic move off, basically he gets away because I don't have any cav left over here. My cav is dead. He can just kind of move off and get out of range. But I win this heroic move off again. And at this point, basically the Emperor, Rutabi, and then like a whole horde of guys with pikes jump on poor Helm. This time I think he struck up, I struck up, we both went to 10, we rolled, and I think actually what happened is when we did the roll off, we got basically the Emperor's Elven Blade like carried the day. I think we rolled a 4. So I took the combat, Helm went down. And at this point, kind of the rest of his army had kind of had broken at this point. So I was able to, that allowed me to get the objective. And I think there was like 5 minutes left in the game. And we actually like called the game at that point. He's like, oh, you win. And then I came back afterwards like, wait a minute, there's enough time to get another turn. Will you give me the couple points to get it over the edge? Because at that point I was like half an inch away from the edge. He was like, oh yeah, sure. We ended up kind of getting over the edge, and I was able to pull it out that way. But it was an emotional roller coaster ride for both of us. And I mean, it was kind of the way SPG was kind of designed to play, where you have these like high stakes. We were both pulling out all sorts of stops and tactics to get into these situations where the dice basically did decide the game, but it was always these high stakes die roll, and every time somebody would win one of these high stakes die roll, they'd get themselves in a position where it's like, I've got this locked up, and then the other player would come back and come up with a tricky strategy to put it all back into play and make it all hinge on another high stakes die roll. And we just did this like all throughout the game, all the way through, and I ended up winning the game, I think, because of the last high stakes die roll going my way. But
yeah, you guys had some dramatic games. It sounds like.
did. Yeah, I mean, it really was a roller coaster ride, an emotional roller coaster ride for both of us. But it's funny because when we left the next day, we were taking the bus to go to the Rotterdam train station, and it turns out Luca was on the same bus, so we got to like sit on the bus and kind of relive the fight one more time before we got on the train together. So it was a great game.
And then, am I right? So then, Matt, you are the Dutch master for Articon, right? Or am I wrong?
I am, because the way
Okay.
it ended up working out is I came in second place, Evan came in first. Evan's already got a ticket, so the ticket passes to me. So I am actually in the midst of changing my citizenship from the United States to the Netherlands. So
Getting a DNA test just to see if there's any chance you have some heritage.
Well, no, actually, it is. There's an odd statutory exception in Netherlands immigration law that says if you actually win the Articon Masters ticket for the Netherlands, you actually qualify for Dutch citizenship. So I'm able to exploit
I
this.
thought there was a piece of bioengineering attached to the ticket that when you touch it, it instantly transforms all of your DNA to Dutch DNA. So you're allowed to compete.
I wish that there was. I actually have to fill out the paperwork and get the Dutch passport, but I should be able to get all that done by Articon. So Haroon has volunteered to get me a Rotterdam White Scars t-shirt that and I gotta find myself a Dutch flag, and I'm gonna go and victory to the House of Orange. When we go
We
to
will get you
Articon.
soon. We will get you sorted. Don't worry.
All right. So I'm going to wholeheartedly embrace my new country here.
Wow. Well, there you go. There you go. Does anyone have another last minute note about the Dutch GT before we take a look at a list? It sounds like, honestly, it really does sound like, I mean, Matt, Evan, like you both attend many events per year. I attend many events per year. It sounds like, from an outward perspective, that this sounds like one of the nicest events of the year. Obviously, every event is quite nice, but it does sound like this was truly an amazing event.
Yeah, it was, and I am serious. I'm completely serious when I say this may well have been like my favorite venue of any SPG event. I think the the Nova the place where Nova has been held up to before last year when
Mm.
Nova moved to a different venue, I think probably is a close second because that was a great hotel. But
Mhm.
I mean, the hotel in the hotel and venue in the Netherlands just had so much more atmosphere than any other place that I've been to. It's just like I said, it was, it felt like I was, kind of there on a vacation as well as an SPG tournament, and that's a great feeling to have.
Yeah.
So, all right, do we want to talk about a list?
Yeah, let's take a look.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen here. We can get the collective wisdom of two continents involved. All right, so here we have a list. And this is a list that was submitted by Tabletop Landscape 7842. And he has created, this is another watcher list. We did a watcher list in the last episode. This is the second one. This is a bit of a different watcher list. And what he created here was something to add a second threat that can distract from the watcher or in turn go unnoticed while the watcher attracts attention. So this is a Moria Serpent Horde Alliance at 700 points. And what it has in it are Warband number 1, which is Suladan on Armored Horse, who's the leader of this. And with him are 2 Serpent Riders, 6 Serpent Guard, and 5 Haradrim Warriors with Spear and Bow. Notice these guys are all Spear for reasons that you'll see shortly. Next, we have Durbers. Durbers is 70 points, and with him comes a Bat Swarm, 5 Goblin Warriors with Spear, 5 Goblin Warriors with Shield, 2 Goblin Warriors with Bow, and 2 Prowlers. And we have a Goblin Captain, and with the Goblin Captain are 4 Goblin Warriors with Spear, 4 Goblin Warriors with Shield, and 2 Goblin Warriors with Bow, and then there's another Goblin Prowler there. And then to round this all off, we have a 200-point Watcher in the Water. So this comes in at 43 models, 9 might, 9 bows. And I assume the strategy here is for the Serpent Guard and the Serpent Guard and the Haradrim Warriors to kind of get behind the Goblin Warriors whenever possible to lend their somewhat higher fight value. And then the Watcher does Watcher things in conjunction with the Bat. So and Suladan has his 6-inch banner to kind of back all of this up. So I'm gonna throw this to our guest first, Haroon. So Haroon, what are your thoughts on this list?
Well, first off, he was also asking a little bit about the more thematic way of it, next to the competitive, if I'm correct, right?
Right.
Matching the watcher to content server, obviously the maximize thematic component of a list and then just as Tolkien dreamed. Well, I think Evan said at the beginning, these days a lot of people, especially the competitive scene, is adding Suladan in there as an ally or being the leader of an army because of all the points he's bringing to every scenario. Personally, I think it is okay-ish. I don't think it's huge of a meta. I'm definitely not a fan of the Goblin Warriors with bows. I would suggest here to just put that one or change them around because if I'm correct, they're the same point value. Changing the bow ones to one with spear and one with bow or one with shield to make a bigger shield wall, so to say, or even make more space for getting more Serpent Guard or Haradrim warriors in there as well. And well, what is it? I played this year at Articon against Antonio, one of the masters as well, that had the Watcher and the Shadow Lord in the same list. I think that's a stronger combination with the Watcher. Suladon is really great, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he adds a lot of spice here. I think he's just there now to give the points and give a small bonus down here. But that's pretty much it. Don't know how you guys are looking to it.
So I don't know. All right, before I speak, does anybody else want to jump in?
You can go for it. I'm interested to hear what you guys always have slightly different takes than I do.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I agree that the Goblin Warriors with bow don't need to be here. I think more Goblin Warriors with shield are a good replacement for that. I also wonder about, there's a question here about how many Haradrim with bows you want versus Serpent Guard, because the Serpent Guard give you the fight 4 in the second rank, and the Haradrim Warriors with spear and bow obviously give you bows, and you could actually as this is designed, there's a few more bows you could stick in here for less Serpent Guards. And so that's one option if you wanted to go the bow option. I think though that probably the better way to do it is kind of the way you've done it here. I think this is a pretty reasonable breakdown with 6 Serpent Guards. I wonder if you want to create a few more Goblin Prowlers. Maybe a number of Goblin Prowlers equal to the number of Serpent Guard that you have, so that the Serpent Guard go behind the Goblin Prowlers, and up there, so that you would have at least 6 files of fight 4 with a 2-handed weapon in front, and with a banner behind, which is a decent amount of killing power, and throwing weapons in front. That's the throwing weapons, because this is outside the Legion, you're not going to get the +1 to wound on them, but it's a decent thing to have. And I think the 2 Serpent Riders probably are useful in this list, as is kind of the extra march. I'd really like to see a second Bat Swarm in this list, and I'm wondering if oh, hang on a second, is Suladan's warband isn't full up, is it?
No.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so you want to increase probably both the number of I keep the 2 Serpent Riders the same. I'd probably actually maybe looking at this, delete the Goblin Prowlers, so that you could get more Haradrim Warriors with spear and bow, and just go that way. Keep the 6 Serpent Guards, so you got fight 4 somewhere. Get some more spears and bows that can get behind ordinary guys, and then just make your warband bigger. I would also consider, even though I know this is going to drop your numbers, I would consider getting a second bat, just because the Watcher Bat combination is what this army hinges around. The Watcher's ability to kind of reach over the front line, grab a hero, pull it in contact with both the Bat and the Watcher, and eat it alive. And if you've only got one Bat in the list, if something bad happens to that Bat, if it gets compelled away, or it gets shot, or compelled someplace where it's going to die, you really want to have a backup Bat. And I would figure out a way to do that. Even if you're dropping like a Serpent Rider or something, a Serpent Rider and a couple Goblins to get the Bat, it's going to bring your model numbers lower. But I think still, if you got the Watcher in the water there, if you're on the high 30s with a 700 point list, I think you're still going to be okay. Those are my thoughts.
Well, he's even around to 40 number, right? 43.
Yeah, he's at
So
43
putting
right now.
yeah. So putting away the 2 serpent riders and probably 1 or 2 goblins will give him the allowance to put the second swarm in there.
Yep.
Still around 30, 39, 40 ish.
Yep.
So still healthy as well.
All
Yeah,
right.
I can jump in quickly. I mean, not in an effort to not say the same things over and over again. I don't, the Prowlers, you only have 3 of them. You should either take more, like Matt said. I personally would just drop them entirely. I think everyone is likely in agreement that the Goblin bows are entirely unnecessary. I honestly, in this build, you have, given that the Serpent Horde is really meant to be your primary like backing of spears, I wouldn't take no goblin spears, but I wouldn't take as many as you have taken. They're really, I mean, of course, there are a few missions where with Maelstrom deployment you could get messed up pretty quickly. So I wouldn't take none, but I mean, the goblins are there to be a D5 core. The spears are just, even if maybe, yeah, I don't think you need, maybe I would drop 2 spears for 2 more guys with shield. I don't as much mind personally the 1 bat. 2 bats are incredibly helpful. I've played Moria a bunch with 1 bat, and I think it's okay. It is, I mean, the Watcher in the water with the bat is your main thing. Something that I personally would like to do, given that Suladan already has Heroic March, I would rather see. Oh, the Goblin Captain can't really be. I'd rather you buff out Suladan's Warband and turn the Goblin Captain into a Goblin Shaman if the numbers work out reasonably well. Um, you still then would have what 21 goblins plus Durbers who are fearless, who are your front core. And then you would have Suladan as the back core. That's probably not a controversial take, but I know a lot of people feel if you can't get like super maximized value out of a shaman, it's not worth it. I like shamans just to have the fearless front, especially because there are whether it's Thranduil's Halls or it's Rivendell with Círdan or Army of the Dead. There are a lot of terror armies that are pretty common that don't revolve around a Wraith with Sapwill, that are common enough to where I think you would want an answer to that. That's just an opinion. I don't know that you would have to go that route. But otherwise, I would tend to agree with what everyone else has said.
Yeah, I
Evan,
guess
what are your
I'll
thoughts?
I'll add some closing thoughts to this. Um I think all of the changes that Alisher and Dad and Haroon mentioned are all perfectly valid. Um and I think it just overall this is an example of when you ally to cover holes, sometimes new holes will pop up in your army
Yeah.
when you try to cover old ones, right? So, for example, this army is really bad against terror when, like, a pure Moria army wouldn't have that problem because they've got a shaman in it. This army, because it has goblins in front, is a little low on numbers in my opinion, just because 43 doesn't feel overly comfortable to me. When you have those less than ideal goblin warriors in front, I might even be tempted to just drop all of the Haradrim warriors or almost all of the Haradrim warriors with spears and bows and just make them all serpent guards because fight 4 is extremely valuable. Basically, every army that isn't elves or Easterlings is going to be fight 4, fight 3. And the jump from fight 3 to fight 4 is absolutely huge. And especially when your numbers aren't great, getting that fight 4 is important. And if you really want some token bow fire in there, then maybe turn the Serpent Riders into Haradrim Raiders with War Spears and Bows, which gets you some maneuverable shooting. I've grown to value that a lot more the more I play mounted cav models, mounted models with bows, just because you can move them half and keep them with the rest of your army at the same time and still shoot. And I really think the shooting power in this list isn't going to affect much just because you're very reliant on the Watcher. You're very reliant getting into combat and getting the Watcher in to be able to kill heroes and pick up troops and kill them. So I think just focusing on getting as much fight 4 in there as possible is very important.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I was actually sitting here looking at this, wondering if maybe the Goblin Captain goes away and you end up with you put more Serpent Horde in this. I just don't know. It's more math than I want to do to try and figure out what the numbers would end up looking. That might end up looking like too small a list. But
Issue is the Goblin Captain is so cheap that whatever
yeah,
hero you
yeah,
take from
exactly.
Serpent Horde is going to really hurt your numbers.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to see what how much it would cost for just a bargain basement Haradrim chieftain here. I mean, a Haradrim chieftain is only 50 points. Yeah, it's still more than 35. Yeah, that would probably drop things probably drop things
Especially
too
because
low.
your warriors are more expensive. You're probably hitting like
Yep.
mid 30s, maybe high 30s if you're lucky. And
Yeah.
with defense 5, defense 4,
Yeah, no, I think
it's
you're
going to
right.
be tougher.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we leave this and but I think bulking out Suladan's warband as best we can. And maybe you don't go with a second Bat Swarm and just play really cagey with the one that you have. Is the way to go.
I'm
All right.
curious though if he
Yeah.
plays it. If you play it, I'm curious if you put a comment in the future how it goes. Because this is definitely, I mean, a very out there kind of a list. It's not like Suladan's allied a lot, but I haven't seen this. I've never played against this, so this seems interesting.
Right. No, it is. It is definitely different, and it is. It's. I think against if you can keep your one Bat Swarm alive, and I think against hero lists that depend on like real powerful heroes, this is going to be a good opponent for them because the the Watcher will just kind of eat one of those heroes a turn. Against the list that's like, my list is a bunch of dudes. This list isn't going to do that well because somebody else's dudes are going to kind of run over your goblins, and the Watcher will kill a bunch of them, but I think not enough to and not quick enough to matter.
Yeah, definitely put it in. It's always one of the things we do here as well. We said during the this episode, when we're making armies, we always talk with each other and then start training with them. And every time we will do the same, like we did now with the four of us, talking over it. What's the strength, the weaknesses, and how would it work if we do like one or two small variations of it? So removing a few minis, adding something else, and making it a bit more spicier. I think that's also the reflection that you all witnessed as well with the GT, with most of the players that they started something similar like this. Like, okay, I would like to play Lothlorien Rivendell, and I want to play this and this, and then they start to keep playing tournaments, friendly games, stuff like that, and they always keep tuning it a little bit. And I think this is a really interesting, but also I think it potentially strong list that can definitely deal with a lot of stuff. But you need to start learning how to play it correctly and maybe the small changes here and there to make it even better, like
Yep.
we all mentioned.
Yep.
I'm really curious to it as well. So definitely gonna keep an eye on it as well.
All right.
All right, well, I think that concludes our episode today. In case any of you listening who were not watching the video, Rainier did leave several minutes ago. He had a quick family emergency he had to jump off to. But this has been a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed quite a bit listening about everyone's games and learning more about the SBG community in the Netherlands. So, Haroon, thank you very much for spending your evening with us. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.
All right,
All right.
everybody. Bye-bye.